in the heart of a once vibrant village tucked deep within the savannas of West Africa, where the ochre dust of the earth met the sky in endless gold and amber hues. A sacred baobab stood, its branches twisted toward the heavens like the arms of ancient spirits yearning for the stars. Beneath its massive shadow, children gathered every twilight, forming a circle of eager faces, wide eyes, and bare, dust-covered feet. Their laughter quieted only when the old man arrived, elder Aid, with skin like folded bark and eyes that had seen centuries. That night, the wind blew strangely. It came not from the north or south, but seemed to spiral from all directions at once, carrying with it the scent of smoked cola nuts and distant rain. The baobab's many hanging masks carved from wood, bone, and painted with age-old dyes rattled gently as if whispering secrets to one another. "Shh," Aid said, leaning on his gnarled staff, its top carved with the symbol of Eshu, the crossroads, where all paths meet. He cleared his throat, the sound low and dry like sand scraping against rock. "Tonight, we begin with the first trick, the one that started all the rest." The children leaned forward, the dusk falling deeper around them, softening their shapes, until they seemed part of the earth itself. Even the older ones, those nearly ready for marriage or war, sat cross-legged like the youngest among them. In the boughs above, a monkey froze mid-climb, and the cicadas ceased their singing. Before the time of kings and the carving of masks, Aid began, before men walked tall and proud. There was only confusion. The gods had not yet chosen their places, and in the very center of it all was Eshu. He said the name softly, as one might say a word that could become a spell if spoken to loudly. The flames from the small fire in the middle of the circle cracked, and one log split into with a hiss. Eshu, the trickster, the messenger, the one who walks backward while pretending to go forward. He did not live in the sky like Obatala, nor under the waves like Olokin. No, Eshu walked among the people, smiling, always smiling. A small girl near the front shivered. The masks above swayed gently, though the wind had stopped. One mask, in particular long-nosed, painted half red, half black, seemed to have turned slightly toward them, its carved eyes catching the firelight. "Now," said Aid, "this is what happened. Long ago, when the gods still tested mankind to determine who was worthy, there was a village where peace reigned. The people shared their crops, sang songs together at dusk, and never quarreled. So perfect was their harmony that even the birds sang more sweetly there. The gods grew bored of such perfection, and Eshu, well, Eshu thrived on chaos. He came to the village wearing two hats. One side of the hat was bright red, the other deep blue. He walked down the central path between, to fields where farmers worked side by side. He greeted no one, only laughed under his breath, a laugh like a flute played in reverse. Later that day, the two farmers quarreled. "Did you see the man in the red hat?" asked one. "Red? No, it was blue," the other said. "Liar, you're the liar." Their shouting echoed across the fields. Their wives came, then their neighbors, and soon the entire village argued, splitting into sides not because of the hat itself, but because neither side could bear to be wrong. They began to break their tools, to burn their own homes, and blame one another. And all the while, Eshu laughed, rolling on the grass just out of sight, the hat now folded into his pocket. When the dust settled, nothing remained but smoke and regret. "Why?" the people asked. "Why would he do this to us?" And the wind answered, in Eshu's voice, "Because truth is never one thing. It is what you see, and what you don't. Back beneath the baobab, silence had fallen. Even the masks seemed to lean in. One boy raised his hands slowly, his fingers trembling. Elder, he asked, why did Eshu want to ruin the village? Ade shook his head. Ruin? No. Child. He wanted to remind them that peace not tested is not peace at all. What is harmony? If one truth can break it. A different girl, older, scowled. That's not fair. If he hadn't come, they would have stayed happy. The elder looked at her for a long moment. Would they? Or were they happy because nothing challenged them yet? A truth ignored is a truth waiting to become a fire. Some of the children glanced upward. More masks had twisted slightly, their carved mouths now pointing downward as if frowning or brooding. The firelight made them flicker, and one child swore he saw a set of eyes blink behind a mask. He rubbed his own eyes quickly. The story doesn't end there, said Ade. Not for Eshu. For the gods noticed. Oh yes, they noticed. He turned his gaze slowly to the edge of the village, where the shadows pressed up against the huts like silent waves. That night, Ade said, Ogun, the god of iron and war, sought Eshu. You've angered the humans, he said, and delighted the gods. But which do you serve? Eshu only smiled. I serve the message, not the sender, not the receiver, only the message. Ogun lifted his great blade but could not strike, for Eshu had already vanished, replaced by a pile of feathers and a trail of ants. The fire snapped loudly, and the circle jumped. Then, unexpectedly, a gust of wind blew through the branches above, and one of the masks, a plain, smooth one, with a painted tongue, fell to the ground in the center of the circle. No one moved. It lay there, face up, grinning at the sky. Ade did not flinch. Instead, he picked up the mask and looked at the children. Do you know what this is? He asked softly. They shook their heads. This is one of Eshu's faces. He leaves them where they are needed. He leaves them when it's time. Time. For what? Whispered the smallest boy. Ade paused. For the next test. That night, after the children had returned to their huts and the fire had burned low, Ade sat alone under the baobab. He held the fallen mask in his lap, and though his eyes were nearly blind with age, he could feel it looking back at him. The wind swirled once more, just enough to lift the elder's gray beard. A voice, barely audible, tickled the air. You told it well, old man. Ade didn't respond. He didn't need to. He just nodded and placed the mask on his face. And in that moment, just for a breath, the stars above flickered. The earth seemed to tilt, and somewhere in the distance, a child laughed in their sleep, with a voice not their own. The morning air shimmered with the scent of tamarind and dry dust as the sun poured golden light through the wide branches of the ancient baobab grove. The trees, older than the oldest memory, stood like silent sentinels in a world that was waking. Slowly, lazily, villagers said that spirits whispered in these trees, and it was best not to come here when the wind moved like breath through the hollows of their trunks. But Kofi, curious and wide-eyed, had never been one to fear what he did not understand. Kofi was not alone. Beside him walked Ya, a girl with the eyes of a hawk and the laugh of a river. She carried a small gourd slung over her back, filled with palm oil for the elders. But her real purpose this morning had nothing to do with errands. She, like Kofi, had heard the whispers. Not just the ones in the trees, but those on the wind. Those passed in half sentences between grandmothers with eyes dulled by time, and those murmured by the fire when children pretended to sleep. Something was coming. Something or someone had begun to stir, as they walked deeper into the grove. The sun was filtered into green, the leaves casting patterned shadows that danced around their feet. Do you really believe what they say? Ya asked suddenly, her voice low but not afraid. That the baobabs speak? Kofi replied with a smirk. No, but I believe someone is using their silence to hide behind. Ya nodded. She had dreamt of masks last night, wooden, bright, grinning. Masks hanging from branches and speaking in riddles. When she woke, she felt a strange pulse in her chest, as if her heart was trying to remind her of something she hadn't yet learned. Suddenly, a rustle snapped their attention to a clump of bush ahead. A figure emerged, bent, cloaked, and crowned with feathers. An old man, a spirit. His skin was wrapped in red cloth, and his eyes sparkled with mischief even as his back hunched with time. Kofi took a cautious step forward. Who are you? He asked, the words shaky in his throat. The figure chuckled, a sound like dry leaves scraping over stone. A question asked without offering cola is a question that may receive no answer. He said, "Yaa." Ever prepared, reached into her pouch and withdrew a small nut, placing it on the ground. The figure knelt with the grace of a cat, plucked the cola, and bit into it without ceremony. Much better, he said. I am called Kweku Unance. Ya gasped. But you are a story. All stories are real somewhere, he replied, smiling, with teeth that seemed to sharp. And where stories live, Eshu is never far. Kofi's mind raced. Eshu, the trickster god, the one who wore red and black, who stood at Crossroads. Who could turn brother against brother with a whisper or unite enemies with a joke? If Kweku Unance, the Spider-Man of legend, was walking among them, then surely Eshu's hand was already in motion. Unance leaned against one of the baobabs and looked up. These trees remember when Eshu wore the twin masks, joy and grief, and walked between villages. He sowed tales that took root like yam vines. He told one village one thing and another village something else. And they quarreled. Oh, how they quarreled. But did they learn? Did they grow? Perhaps. That's always the riddle. Ya stepped forward. Why now? Why is he stirring again? Because you children are forgetting, Unance said simply. Forgetting how to listen. How to read what the sky says before the rain falls. You build with stones and metal, and you forget the stories that shaped the land. Eshu is not angry, but he is curious. He wants to see if you remember how to think sideways, not straight. He pulled something from his cloak, a mask. It was small, carved from wood so dark it almost shimmered blue. One side of the mask grinned wide, the other frowned deep. It was unmistakably a trickster's mask. Take it, Unance said, holding it out to Kofi. You may need it. As soon as Kofi's fingers brushed the mask, the air changed. A wind swept through the grove, low and curling, like laughter skimming through grass. The baobabs creaked not with age but with amusement. Shadows shifted. The day was no longer morning. It was something in between light and dusk, though the sun had not moved. Do you feel that? Ya whispered. Yes, Kofi said. I think we've stepped into a story. Unance was gone, vanished, as if swallowed by the roots of the baobab, or peeled away by the wind. In his place lay a string of cowrie shells arranged in a spiral. A sign, an invitation. Kofi picked them up. As soon as he did, he knew the path forward. Not because he saw it, but because it was there, inside his mind now, as if it had always been. They walked on, deeper still, until the grove opened to a wide clearing filled with stones arranged in spirals, circles, and arrows. In the center was a giant tree unlike any other. Its trunk was wrapped in red cloth, and at its base were offerings, feathers, coins, oil, bits of bone, and half-burned herbs. Ya approached it first. She reached out and touched the cloth. Nothing happened, but she felt a pulse run through her fingers, a heartbeat, not hers. The trees. Kofi pulled the mask from his pouch. He's watching us. Ya turned. No, he's waiting. And in that moment, laughter echoed, not cruel, not kind, just amused. It rolled through the clearing, like thunder without a storm. And they knew. Eshu had seen them. And the story had begun. The morning sun filtered through the broad leaves of the forest canopy, shimmering in gold and dew as if the sky itself had stitched threads of light onto the earth. With every step, the jungle whispered, birds chirped songs of old secrets. Branches snapped beneath cautious feet, and winds shifted as if listening. Kojo, still determined to reach the sacred grove of Igbodu before sundown, moved with careful intent. The path ahead was no longer a straight one. It now split into two, like the tongue of a serpent, one veering left, winding through dark shadows, the other veering right, bathed in unnatural brightness. He paused. His grandmother's stories echoed in his mind. Eshu, the master of Crossroads, reveled in choice. He never offered one without consequence. If you went left, perhaps your soul would grow wiser. If you went right, perhaps you'd lose everything for the sake of something new. Either way, Eshu would laugh, for the game would be his, and you the player. Kojo looked around. There was no one. No traveler, no guide, not even a bird now. Everything had gone still. He breathed in and out, clutching the worn talisman tied around his neck. It had been his mother's. She used to say, when lost, listen to silence. The gods speak loudest in it. Just then, a faint hum wafted from behind, a soft, rhythmical tune, like someone tapping a talking drum. He turned and found himself staring at a man unlike any other he had met on his journey. The man wore a red conical hat, tilted over one eye, and his smile was sharp like the edge of a calabash freshly cracked. One moment, he seemed old with a beard that touched his navel. The next, he was young, bare-faced, mischief twinkling in his almond-shaped eyes. His robe shimmered in the sun-black one second, shimmering indigo the next. "Good morning, traveler," the man said with a bow that mocked politeness. "Crossroads are cruel friends. They invite you in, then tell no secrets. Unless," he leaned in, "unless you know how to laugh with them." Kojo narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" The man gave a theatrical sigh. Always with the questions, always the suspicion. "I'm a humble wanderer, like you. I know these lands better than the trees do. Perhaps I can help you choose. Or perhaps I'll confuse you even more." Kojo stepped back. "You're Eshu." The man grinned. "Or maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just your doubt wearing a hat. Maybe I'm a story you remembered too well." He snapped his fingers. The two paths behind him trembled, shifting slightly like waves made of soil and root. Kojo felt his heart pound. Why now? Why show yourself? Eshu, or the man pretending to be him, walked toward the left path. "Because you reached the first true choice. Until now, your journey has been reaction. The storm forced you. The lion chased you. The whisper led you. But now, you choose." He pulled out two masks from under his cloak. One was ivory white, with calm eyes and a smile that felt hollow. The other was obsidian black, its eyes wild and carved with flame-like etchings. He held them both out. "You may wear one, just for this part of the road, but you must wear it completely. No half-hearted pretending." Kojo hesitated. What do they mean? Eshu shrugged. Masks always mean what you let them. But the left path favors the wild mask fire and chaos. The right path, the calm mask peace and slowness. Pick poorly, and you may never arrive where you think you're going. Kojo stared at the masks. They pulsed faintly in his hands when he touched them. The white one made his heart beat slow, his thoughts quiet. The black one made his vision sharp, his body tense. To parts of himself, to truths, maybe, or to lies. He put on the black mask. The forest groaned, Eshu laughed. Ah, boldness. Let's see where it leads. Kojo stepped onto the left path, his senses alight. Every leaf seemed sharper, every sound more amplified. It wasn't just the path that had changed, it was him. His thoughts raced. He could feel the history in the stones, the spirits in the air. It was overwhelming. The jungle thickened quickly. Vines curled as if reaching to grab his limbs. The trees leaned closer. Shadows moved without source. And far ahead, a flicker of fire. He pressed on. The fire resolved itself into a circle of dancers, their faces painted, their feet pounding into the dust in rhythm. At the center, a woman stood still, holding a gourd to the sky. Kojo approached cautiously. The dancers didn't see him or pretended not to. The woman turned, her eyes wide, her voice hollow. You wear the flame, she said. You must dance with it. Kojo didn't understand, but the rhythm pulled at him. The mask, now almost fused to his face, seemed to pulse in time with the drumbeat. His feet moved of their own accord. He joined the circle, his steps unsure but growing bolder. The dance became a trance. He saw visions of tricksters in courts, of gods trading lies like seeds, of kingdoms rising through cleverness and falling through pride. He saw Eshu laughing. In every story, always at the edge, never center, always present. The flames roared, and in them, the face of the red-hatted man again. Then the ground cracked. A tree burst into flames, the dancers vanished in smoke, and Kojo collapsed, breathless. When he awoke, he was at the end of the left path. The mask had vanished. His face was damp with sweat, his legs sore. But something had changed. Inside, he felt a piece of the chaos still flickering, knowledge he hadn't had before. Stories that were now a part of him. Eshu was waiting by a small fire, roasting yams. He tossed one to Kojo. You danced well, he said. Kojo bit into the yam, its heat comforting. Was it real? Eshu winked. Was it? Or was it just the part of you keep locked away? The flame that fears its own brightness. Kojo looked up. The path ahead narrowed into mist again, leading deeper into unknown forests. But now he knew Eshu would always be nearby, hiding behind choices, laughing behind consequences. And yet, Kojo no longer feared it. He stood up, taller than before. The journey had only begun. The dense mist of dawn had barely lifted when the village of Iluoro awoke to murmurs of an omen. A strange wind had swept through the compound of the revered oracle, Baba Odu, and his white-robed apprentices spoke of divine whispers. Chickens had refused to crow, and palm wine had turned bitter. In a land where every leaf and stone could carry a god's intent, such signs did not go unnoticed. Eshu, still wearing the guise of an ordinary wanderer, stood at the edge of the gathering crowd, his eyes gleaming like black coals in the morning light. He leaned against a crooked baobab tree, carving something into a calabash with a casual, amused air. Round him, villagers whispered nervously, casting furtive glances toward the oracle's shrine. Today, the oracle would speak a rare and powerful, event that happened only when the balance between the mortal world and the divine was about to tilt. Baba Odu emerged slowly from the shrine, his beaded staff tapping against the ground in rhythm with his breath. His white beard flowed down to his waist, and his eyes seemed clouded yet piercing. He raised both arms, and silence descended. "Spirits have stirred," he began, his voice soft but clear. "The gods wear many masks, but one of them laughs where others weep. One of them opens paths that lead nowhere and leads men into forests from which they return changed." A shiver passed through the crowd. All knew who he spoke of, even without a name. The one who walks both light and shadow. Baba Odu continued. Eshu. Gasps rose like smoke from the crowd. Children pressed against their mothers. Hunters clutched their amulets. No one dared say Eshu's name aloud, yet it now hovered in the air like a hornet ready to sting. But the oracle added, his gaze sweeping the crowd, "Eshu has left a riddle, a test." He held up a single object, a mask. Not just any mask this. One shimmered with colors that changed depending on the angle. Red from the left, blue from the right. It was carved with two faces, one smiling, one crying. "Whosoever can understand the truth of this mask shall gain the blessing of the gods," the oracle said, placing it on a pedestal in the village center. "But beware, the path to truth may be wrapped in trickery." That was all. The oracle turned, and with the rustle of his robes, vanished back into his shrine. Eshu watched with quiet delight. His fingers still worked the calabash, but his attention was entirely on the reactions playing out. He did not need to interfere, not yet. Humans, when given just a nudge, often created chaos all on their own. By midday, the mask had become the village obsession. Elders gathered around it, debating its meanings. Warriors swore it was a warning of war. Healers claimed it showed the balance between sickness and cure. A weaver said it represented the duality of life and death. And a fisherman insisted it was a symbol of the sea god's wrath. Each interpretation led to arguments. Old friendships frayed. Suspicion bloomed. The oracle said nothing more, and the mask remained untouched. The Eshu, meanwhile, slipped unnoticed into the hut of the oracle late that night. Baba Odu was not surprised. "I knew you'd come," he said, without turning. "You always do when your name is spoken to many times." Eshu grinned, his sandals making no sound on the earth floor. "And you always bait the hook with the fattest worm. Old friend, the village needs to learn," the oracle said. "But perhaps they need a little help unraveling the riddle." Eshu twirled a small bronze coin between his fingers. "Help, or more confusion? Same thing, where you're concerned." Outside, the villagers were gathering again, this time with torches and accusations. A boy had disappeared after touching the mask, and a rumor claimed he'd been taken by spirits. Someone said they saw him walking into the forest alone, in a trance. Eshu slipped out before dawn. He found the boy easily. The child had merely wandered into the woods, following a trail of bright feathers Eshu himself had scattered. The trickster sat beside the boy, who was curled up beneath a fig tree, and whispered in his ear, "You saw both sides of the mask, didn't you?" The boy nodded, double quotes, "Then go back and say this. It is not what the mask shows that matters, but what you choose to see." By the time the sun rose, the boy stood in the village square, delivering the message in a voice clear and strong. The villagers fell silent. For the first time, they stopped arguing. Some wept, others laughed, and the mask, it cracked just slightly, and from the crack emerged a single white feather, which floated into the sky. Baba Odu smiled from his shrine. Eshu smiled too, but with more teeth. Later, as Eshu vanished into the morning haze, someone swore they saw the mask reform itself. Others said it turned completely red. A few believed it had no color at all, but no one could agree. And that was exactly the way Eshu liked it. The road forked beneath the twilight sky, as if the world itself had taken a deep breath and paused. Trees leaned in at strange angles, their trunks twisted like the fingers of old gods pointing in different directions. The dirt paths were worn and uneven, one choked with wild brambles and the scent of mossy decay, the other smooth and sunlit, almost too inviting. Eshu stood in the middle, barefoot, eyes dancing. His cloak shimmered between red and black depending on the angle. Fluttering though there was no wind, behind him trudged a lake. The reluctant scholar, her robe dusted with dried mud and her eyes wide with suspicion. She had learned already never to ask Eshu direct questions. His answers were riddles, his silences, traps. Still, something about him tugged her forward, like a secret waiting to be deciphered. "Why does the road split here?" she asked, knowing full well it wasn't a safe question. Eshu crouched down and scooped a handful of dirt. "One path tells the truth," he said, letting it slip through his fingers. "And the other tells you what you want to hear. That's no answer. It's the only answer that won't kill you." She sighed. She was tired of tricks, but she was more tired of the temple dreams that sent her on this journey. They told her to follow the one who wore chaos like perfume. And now that she had found him, her world had become smoke and illusion. Eshu turned to her, grinning. "We'll take the road on the left. It smells like lies." They walked. Hours passed, maybe days. Time was strange in Eshu's company. The trees whispered things in languages she only remembered in nightmares. Once, they passed a snake coiled like a crown atop a rock. It spoke in Eshu's voice, though his lips never moved. The snake said, "Every promise is a gamble, even the ones you make to yourself." Then they came upon a woman sitting cross-legged beneath an old baobab. She was ancient but smiled like a girl. Her face bore paint the color of night fires and her hands were dipped in honey. Children peeked from behind the tree, only they were not children, but things shaped like them, all teeth and eyes. "Have you come to pay the debt?" she asked. Alake hesitated. "What debt?" The old woman looked at Eshu, who was now juggling pebbles with his toes. "Not your debt," the woman whispered. "His." Alake turned sharply to him. "You owe her." Eshu laughed. "Everyone owes someone. That's what makes the world spin." The woman stood. The honey on her fingers began to drip to the soil. Wherever it fell, flowers grew instantly, flowers with whispering mouths instead of petals. "Eshu stole fire from my mouth once," she said. "Promise me a favor in return. Today, I ask it." Eshu dropped the pebbles. "Name it." "I want her shadow," the woman said, pointing to a lake. A lake stepped back. "What would you do with it?" "Dance in it. Wear it. Feed it to my children." She smiled. Nothing cruel, but a lake felt her bones tremble. A life without a shadow. What did that mean? Eshu winked at her. "You don't have to give it. But then, we must take the right-hand road. The one that tells me what I want to hear." Eshu nodded solemnly. "Wouldn't that be lovely?" Alake stared at the old woman. "If I give it, what happens to me?" "You'll still be you," said the woman. "Just less anchored. Lighter. The winds will like you more, but the mirrors may forget you. And if I don't, you'll never hear the second riddle." Alake looked to Eshu. "There's a second riddle." He said nothing, but the trees behind him laughed. She sighed and stepped forward. Fine. Take it. The old woman clapped. Her fingers shimmered, and a lake felt a coldness crawl up her back. For a moment, her body seemed to flicker. Her outline became softer. When she looked down, her feet cast no shadow. The children things laughed and danced, catching the shadow like a toy. They wrapped it in palm leaves and vanished into the dark. A lake swayed but didn't fall. You'll get used to it, the woman said kindly. Now, go. She sat again. The tree behind her grew taller, its branches scraping the clouds. They walked on. What's the second riddle? A lake asked quietly. Eshu grinned. You'll know it when you ask yourself the right question. That's not fair. Nothing about gods is fair, especially the clever ones. By nightfall, they reached a hill. At the top stood a giant mask carved into stone. It was neither smiling nor frowning. Its expression was unreadable, but its eyes followed them as they climbed. Eshu bowed before it. Is this another bargain? A lake asked. Not quite. This is the one place I never lie. You lie everywhere else. I lie in dreams, in shadows, in songs. But not here. She touched the mask. It was warm, like skin. Speak to it, Eshu said. It listens. She leaned in. Who am I becoming? The mask didn't move, but something deep inside it sighed. A vessel. Of what? The mask said nothing. Eshu smiled. Even silence is an answer. A lake sat down before the mask. She was tired of walking, tired of questions, tired of the strange sensation of being both watched and forgotten. She closed her eyes and dreamed. Of fire in her dream, Eshu was dancing through a village with a dozen masks in his arms. He changed faces with each step, becoming a lover, a priest, a thief, a king. The people cheered, but each cheer seemed to cost them something. A memory, a tooth, a name. By the time he finished dancing, no one remembered who they were, except a lake. She stood in the center, maskless and shadowless, and everyone bowed to her. She woke up in darkness. Eshu sat nearby, humming to himself. Your second bargain is done, he said. When did I make it? While you slept. You dreamed. Truth. That's more than most people manage. She didn't understand, but she didn't argue. What now? Now, said Eshu, rising. We go to the city of mirrors. And what will I find there? Your reflection. Or maybe just the pieces of it. A lake followed. She had no shadow, no answers, and no promise that the road ahead would be kind. But she had Eshu, and that, for now, was enough. The midday sun hung heavily over the village, its golden rays filtering through the thick canopy of trees, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow on the ground. The elders sat beneath the sacred Iroko tree, their weathered faces turned upward toward the sky, murmuring about omens and signs, while children darted between the huts, their laughter like birdsong echoing through the heat-hushed air. Yet even amid this familiar rhythm of life, a change had taken root, slow, subtle, and insidious. It began with a silence. The village shrine, once alive with the low hum of prayer, the clink of cowries, and the smoke of sacred herbs curling into the air, now stood quiet. The priestess, Mama Ifeoma, had not been seen in days, and more troubling still, the offerings that once filled the altar, ripe plantains, carved wooden masks, feathers dipped in oil, were absent. No one spoke of it directly, but the void was felt like a cold hand on the neck. The deity Eshu, the trickster, thrived on motion, on choice, on chaos. To forget him was to invite imbalance, and imbalance was precisely what had begun to tiptoe into the village. Crops spoiled prematurely. The river, once generous, grew unpredictable. Chickens vanished from their coops, and the yam festival, the season's joy, was met with rain so heavy it tore through the ceremonial tents. Still, many brushed it off. It is only nature, they said, a season of change. It will pass. But not all were convinced. Akin, a young man with restless eyes and a storyteller's heart, had grown increasingly disturbed. He remembered the stories his grandmother told of Eshu, the divine mischief maker, who walked at the crossroads of gods and men, whose laughter shaped destinies. Eshu could open a path or close it. He could bless or unravel, all with the same smile. Forgetting him was not an act of negligence. It was a challenge. That evening, under a bleeding sun, Akin crept toward the shrine. Overgrown with vines and half swallowed by dust, it looked less like a holy place and more like a forgotten ruin. The stone steps groaned under his weight. At the altar, he knelt, uncertain of how to begin. The words of the old prayers tangled on his tongue, foreign after so long. Still, he bowed, whispering Eshu's many names. Eligbara, the guardian of the crossroads, the master of duality. He placed what little he had, a kola nut, a carved wooden whistle, and a smear of red palm oil, onto the altar. It wasn't much, but it was movement. It was memory. He lit a single stick of incense and closed his eyes. When he opened them, a man stood before him, clad in patchwork cloth, bare feet dusted with red earth. The stranger smiled with a crooked mouth. His eyes shimmered, not gold, not brown, but something like smoke trapped in glass. You remembered, the man said. Akin stumbled backward. Who are you? The man shrugged. Some call me Eshu. Others call me Trouble. Akin swallowed hard. We forgot. I mean, the village, we didn't mean to. It just happened. Ah, Eshu replied, his voice smooth, sly, like wind slipping through leaves. It always just happens, doesn't it? Akin's voice cracked. We meant no disrespect. Eshu leaned in. Intentions mean nothing without action. You know what happens when I'm ignored. Akin didn't answer. I play, Eshu said simply. And when I play, the world trembles. A gust of wind slammed through the grove, blowing leaves into a frantic dance. The flames on the incense danced higher. Eshu stepped around the shrine, trailing his fingers along the dusty surfaces. You want to make it right, he said. Yes, Akin replied. Then choose. Akin frowned. Choose what? Eshu's grin widened. That's always the question, isn't it? There are two roads before you. One is safe, familiar, ordinary. It leads you back to the village, to the same days, the same stories. The other is uncertain, dangerous, but it may be the only way to awaken the gods. Akin hesitated. I'll go. You haven't even heard the journey yet. I don't need to, Akin replied. We forgot. I want to remember, even if it hurts. Eshu nodded slowly. Brave, or foolish. But then again, those two are brothers. With a wave of his hand, Eshu turned the shrine into a living map. Its floor became earth. Its walls dissolved into mist. And Akin found himself at a crossroads, quite literally. Four paths sprawled in different directions, each marked by a different symbol, a skull, a flame, a bird, and a mirror. Your offering was accepted, Eshu said, but the gods need more than memory. They need ritual. Walk the paths. Complete what was forgotten. And just like that, Eshu vanished. The first path Akin chose was marked with the skull. The path was overgrown with thorns and twisted branches. As he walked, the air thickened with the scent of rot and regret. Voices whispered from the dark. Choices not taken, apologies never made. At the end of the trail stood a giant wooden mask, cracked and broken. He knelt before it, cleaned it with river water, and placed the cola nut inside its mouth. The mask whispered thanks before dissolving into smoke. The second path was flame. Heat wrapped around Akin like a blanket, not painful, but suffocating. Here, he was shown memories of the village's arrogance, of rituals skipped, of festivals turned into vanity, of prayers said only for gain. At the center was a fire pit with no flame. He dropped the carved whistle in, and it sparked to life, dancing upward, casting shadows in the shape of forgotten gods. The third path was the bird. Here, the trees opened into a clearing where feathers floated in still air. He heard children's laughter, old songs, and drums played only during sacred days. A bird landed on his shoulder, watching with knowing eyes. Akin offered the smear of palm oil on a broadleaf. The bird pecked it, then flew upward, releasing a trail of song that filled the air with the music of the old ways. The final path was the mirror that showed Akin, not as he was, but as he could be. Priest, trickster, liar, leader, each version of himself stepped forward, offering him a mask. Choose. They all said he chose none. Instead, he knelt once again and whispered Eshu's name. The mirror shattered back at the shrine. Dawn was breaking. The village began to stir. At the center of the altar now sat the four symbols: skull, flame, bird, and broken glass. Mama Ifeima appeared behind him, her face pale, her voice steady. "You remembered?" she said. "We all must," Akin whispered, and somewhere, far off, Eshu laughed. The sun hung low in the sky, spilling long amber streaks across the dirt paths that twisted through the ancient baobab grove. The trees towered like timeless sentinels, their bloated trunks cracked with age, bark scored with the marks of 1,000 passing seasons. In this sacred place, where the roots dug deep into the bones of the land and the air carried a hush untouched by village chatter, Eshu prepared his next trick. He was not alone. A young man named Toby had ventured into the grove, chasing a dream. That came in the form of a whisper. For 3 nights, his sleep had been visited by a strange, mirthful voice calling him by name, leading him deeper into the forest. He was told he would find answers in the silence of the baobabs, but answers, Toby soon learned, were never offered freely by the trickster god. Eshu had woven a veil over the grove, nothing too grand, nothing loud, just subtle confusions. The same rock appearing 3 times along the same path, shadows that twisted left when the sun should have cast them right, and echoes of laughter that never came from his own mouth. Toby stumbled and turned, heart racing with every step, yet the voice that had called him here remained playful. Finally, he reached a wide clearing. The light shifted there, warm and golden, and the grove suddenly looked more like a throne room. At the center stood Eshu, not in the guise of a man, but as a figure shifting between shapes. His face flickered between a laughing youth, an old man bent by time, a beautiful woman with golden eyes, and something else entirely. Something that seemed to wear all masks and none at once. "You came," Eshu said, with a tilt of his head that was neither welcoming nor unkind. "What did you hope to find here, child of men?" Toby knelt, unsure why. Something in the air felt older than dust. "I was told to come. I heard your voice." "Aha," Eshu chuckled. "Then perhaps you are not so lost after all." with a wave of his hand. The grove changed. The trees rearranged themselves like actors taking new places on a stage. The wind shifted. A trail appeared, lined with glowing stones. "You may walk the path," Eshu said, "but every step comes with a question, and every question must be answered with more than truth." Toby blinked. "More than truth?" "Yes," said Eshu, now leaning on a staff that hadn't existed a moment ago. "Truth alone is for those who seek safety, but you seek understanding, so you must give answers that carry weight." And so, the trial began. The first stone glowed bright as Toby approached. A voice echoed not Eshu's, but his own voice, distorted and distant. "What do you fear most?" He hesitated. "Being forgotten." The stone dimmed, and a breeze passed through. From the leaves above, whispers dropped like soft rain. "Then walk forward knowing your steps will not last." The second stone lit up. "What do you believe is real?" Toby thought harder now. "What I see, what I touch." Another breeze, a faint laugh. "Then know you are blind in the land of gods." The third stone. "What is your greatest desire?" Toby, growing tired of riddles, answered more plainly. "To matter." The grove hushed. Eshu's laughter broke the silence, gentle and fond. "Ah, to matter. That is the oldest lie we teach ourselves." The path veered suddenly. Trees loomed overhead, casting patterns on the ground like tangled scripts. Toby was sweating now. The next stone glowed. "Who are you without your name?" He paused. His name was all he had in this strange realm. Without it, was he anything? "I'm a question," he said at last, and this time, the forest nodded far ahead. Eshu stood again, the light behind him making his form blur and shimmer like fire in motion. "You answer well, mortal." Most would fail by now, giving only what they were told to believe. Toby approached the god, weary but more certain with each step. "What is this place?" he asked. "The baobab grove is many things. To you, today, it is the spine of a riddle," said Eshu. "To others, it's a jail. And to me," he smiled wide, "it's just where I keep my best stories." He lifted a finger, and the trees swayed. Each branch suddenly shimmered with a face, some weeping, some laughing, some sleeping. "These are the ones who answered wrongly," Eshu said. "They spoke only what was expected. Their masks fit too perfectly. And now they hang here, stories unfinished." Toby stared, his heart pounding. "And what if I answer rightly? What if I pass?" "Then you get to keep walking," Eshu replied. "And if you keep walking long enough, you might learn how to trick even the gods." For a moment, Toby considered turning back, but when he looked behind him, there was no path, only the hush of forgotten leaves and dust, so he stepped forward. Again, now the questions became stranger. What shape does silence take in your memory? A closed door. What color is regret? A child's drawing, left in the rain. What sound did your mother's sorrow make? Toby closed his eyes. Like water boiling over, each answer carved something away, like stone worn by wind. But Toby felt no smaller, for it only clearer. At last, he reached the center of the grove, where a small wooden mask rested on a stone pedestal. It was carved crudely but alive with expression, a mischievous smirk, brows arched like questions. Eshu gestured to it. "Take it." Toby reached out. "What happens if I do?" "You'll wear the truth, just for a little while, and the world may never look the same again." He picked up the mask. It was warm. The grove dimmed. When he placed it upon his face, 1,000 voices whispered at once. He could see everything, not with eyes, but with meaning. He saw lies layered over truths, saw paths not taken and jokes never told. He saw Eshu, not as a god, but as a reflection of everyone who had ever questioned the shape of reality. Then, the mask fell away. He stood, alone again. The grove was just trees now. The path behind him had returned, plain and ordinary. But something within him had changed. Eshu was gone, of course, but in the bark of the baobabs, in the shape of the wind, and in the soft chuckle that brushed his shoulder as he turned to leave Toby. Knew he'd never be far from the trickster again. He left the grove not with answers, but with the power of better questions, and in the distance, the god smiled. Nightfall cloaked the land in a velvet hush, broken only by the rhythmic drumming of distant hands and the crackle of fire. Near the sacred baobab tree, this tree, older than the memory of men, stood at the meeting of four ancient paths. Beneath its mighty branches, a shallow, shimmering pool reflected the stars above, though no one knew when water first began to gather there. The pool was called the Mirror of Eshu, for it was said he once spat into it after laughing at mankind's confusion. Now it served as a portal for glimpses into the intentions of gods, or perhaps only their illusions. Akani approached with hesitant steps, the soles of his feet pressing softly into the dust. The weight of his mission bent his shoulders. He had walked far to reach this place, called here by the whispering of the old priestess, who said Eshu was waiting. The pool flickered even though no wind stirred, and for a brief moment, Akani saw his reflection blink back at him with Eshu's sly smile. "I see you've come," said a voice not from the air, not from behind, not even from the pool. It came from everywhere at once, and nowhere in particular. Akani did not flinch, only lowered his head. "Yes, trickster, I have questions." Eshu appeared, as he often did, from the periphery of thought. One blink, and the god was there, bare feet dusted with ash, a crooked hat tipping toward mischief, and eyes that gleamed with childlike delight and ancient cruelty. "Ah, questions," Eshu purred, sitting cross-legged atop the surface of the pool without sinking. "They multiply like ants in the sun. Go ahead, ask." Akani clenched his fists. "Why did you cause the quarrel in our village? Why send my brother dreams that led him into the forest, where he vanished?" Eshu's grin widened. "Because it was needed." "Needed?" Akani's voice cracked. "You toy with people's lives. You twist dreams. You plant lies." "No," said Eshu, raising a finger. "I plant possibilities. I offer doors. It is you who choose which to open." Your brother followed his dream. Did he not listen to the elders who warned of the forest spirits? Did he not doubt the vision? Akani swallowed hard. The forest was forbidden, sacred, and full of whispers. His brother, Olu, had awoken one morning claiming he saw their late mother smiling at him, in a dream, beckoning him into the trees. He was mourning, Akani said. He believed the vision was comfort. And it was, Eshu said, lounging back lazily, hands folded behind his head. But comfort is not the same as safety. The god of Crossroads spun something small between his fingers, a coin, maybe, or a pebble. He tossed it into the air and caught it again. I am the fork in the road, boy, not the hand that pushes. But you whisper, Akani growled. You make people believe their path is chosen. Belief, Eshu chuckled, is my most delicious trick. What is a path but the belief that one step must follow another? Silence stretched between them, filled only by the drumming that now seemed to beat from within the tree itself. Akani's jaw tensed. I want him back. My brother. Do you? Eshu asked, now rolling onto his side on the pool. Or do you want meaning? A tidy little story where loss leads to growth, and grief leads to wisdom. Akani's eyes flashed. I want the truth. Eshu sat up slowly. His head disappeared. His form seemed to shift, as though his skin were smoke remembering how to be flesh. Then look, he said, and with a single clap, the pool rippled and rose, becoming not water, but glass in its depths. Akani saw his brother. Alive, yes, but changed. Living among forest spirits, wearing leaves, his eyes glowing with otherworldly light. He was laughing, dancing, forgetting. He chose to stay. Akani whispered. Eshu nodded. He found a path beyond pain. Akani fell to his knees. He doesn't remember me. No, Eshu said softly, because you remembered enough for both of you. The boy looked up. Can I speak with him? You may try, said Eshu. But know this, what is remembered by you may not be desired by him. Akani stared into the glassy pool again, watching as his brother twirled through beams of moonlight, surrounded by strange creatures made of bark and mist. He raised a hand and called out, Olu? The name echoed once, twice, and faded. Olu paused, head tilted, like an animal sensing danger or familiarity. Then he turned his back and vanished deeper into the forest. Akani sobbed. Silently, Eshu placed a hand on his shoulder, surprisingly gentle. There's no trick here, only choice. You came to ask why he left. You now know. You may go. But Akani did not rise. What if I wish to stay too? The god tilted his head. Then you must trade something precious. The spirits do not accept the unbroken. Akani understood. My memories. Exactly. Eshu grinned. Give them your sorrow, your brother's face, your mother's lullabies, and you may dance forever. He stood, offered a hand. Or return to the world. Carry this story. Become the elder who warns, not the boy who weeps. Akani looked between the god's fingers and the pool and the sky above. So many choices, so many masks, so many illusions stitched together to make meaning. And in the center of it all, the trickster smiled, neither kind nor cruel, simply amused. The chamber was quiet, but the air was alive with tension. 1,000 eyes from across the pantheon had gathered, gods of rain and sun, deities of fertility and plague, spirits that whispered in rivers and howled in the forests. All were present. In the celestial court, a sacred place suspended between realms, built from the bones of stardust and veiled in an ever-shifting mist of divine power. In the center stood Eshu, not bound, not shackled, but watched to his left, the Council of Order. Tall, glowing figures cloaked in radiant light, representing justice, balance, and harmony. To his right, the Tribunal of Chaos, darker, wilder, cloaked in feathers, bone, and shadow, representing the wild, untamed forces of life. And Eshu, smiling faintly as always, stood on the fine line between them. He wore a crimson robe lined with gold, and on his face, a mask half grinning, half scowling, a symbol of duality, of choice, of consequence. It had taken centuries for things to come to this. For ages, Eshu had walked among men and gods, threading confusion and laughter, creating problems only to reveal hidden truths. He was the messenger, the path opener, the mischief maker. But now, complaints had stacked like brittle scrolls. Mortals were rising against each other due to riddles whispered by the wind. Kings had crumbled after making bargains they couldn't remember. Even the gods themselves had been twisted by his games. The court, finally, had summoned him. Eshu, boomed the voice of Obatala, the Orisha of purity and wisdom, who sat upon the seat of white fire. Do you understand why you stand here? Eshu tilted his head. Yes, he said calmly, and yet, no. A murmur passed through the crowd. It was the kind of answer only Eshu would give. Then speak your truth, Obatala continued. This court will weigh your words. You have been charged with the distortion of fate, with bending the will of men and gods alike, with inciting war through whispers and laughter. Eshu stepped forward. And I am guilty of all, he said without hesitation. Gasps echoed like thunder. But, he added, raising a finger, so are all of you. The gods bristled. The sky darkened. Wind shifted. Even the stars blinked. Do not test this court, growled Songo, the god of thunder, who stood near the edge of the tribunal of order. You speak in riddles as always. And you, Eshu countered, hide your pride behind discipline. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Even the mist that shrouded the court seemed to hush itself. I have never denied who I am, Eshu continued. My role has always been clear, though rarely understood. I am the road not taken, the coin mid-flip, the question without an answer. I am not your villain. I am your mirror. Mirror, asked Yamoya, goddess of the waters. Then what reflection did you offer when you tricked the Prince of Oyo into believing his brother poisoned his water? The reflection, said Eshu, of fear that already lived in his heart. The court grew still. The poison was never in the cup, Eshu said. It was in the silence between them. I did not create it, I only stirred it. And the village you led into the desert with signs and omens demanded Orunmila, the god of destiny. They begged for a prophecy, Eshu said. I gave them one. It was the wrong path. Yes, but they found water when they dug, and in doing so, founded a city where there was none. Are they cursed or blessed? Silence again. Eshu turned slowly, looking at the gathered deities. Tell me, brothers, sisters, how many of you rule by control, by obedience, by fear of consequence? And yet, you call me the deceiver. He smiled. But it wasn't his usual smirk. It was quieter, wiser. I sow chaos, yes, but chaos reveals truth. A truth comfort has long buried. Obatala raised a hand. You would make the world your board, and mortals your pawns. No, Eshu said softly. I give mortals the dice. He stepped forward again. I wear the mask of mischief. Yes, but a mask can smile or weep. It is not my trickery that threatens you, it is the freedom it gives. A deep pause followed. The gods were uneasy. His words were too close, too sharp. It was then that a mortal entered. This was rare, dangerous even. But the court had summoned her. A girl from a tiny village who had once followed Eshu's whispered advice and refused to marry a chief's son, choosing instead to become a healer. Her name was Adesina. She knelt, trembling, as all eyes fell upon her. Child, said Obatala, speak your truth. You were touched by Eshu's hand. I was, she said, voice steadying. He came to me in the forest, told me to listen to the wind instead of the voices of men. I did, and they called me mad. But the herbs I gathered from that voice healed many. And when the chief's son later fell sick, I was the one who saved him. She looked at Eshu. He did not trick me. He reminded me of a voice I had silenced myself. The court shifted uneasily. This was not what they had expected. More mortals were summoned, each bearing a different tale. One told of being ruined by Eshu's joke. Another, of being saved by it. Another still, of being changed. Each story painted a different mask. The court argued for days. Should a god be punished for truth given in twisted form? For gifts that looked like tricks, and tricks that ended as gifts. In the end, the final word came from Orunmila, god of fate. He rose, his voice deep and low like the rumble beneath mountains. Eshu, he said, has not broken the world. He has reminded it that it can break. He turned to the court. Let us not judge a god by the discomfort he brings, but by what is born from it. And with that, the judgment was passed. Eshu would remain what he had always been, the opener of roads, the god who speaks both truth and jest. He would not be bound, for binding him would mean binding choice itself. As he left the court, mask back in place, Eshu glanced over his shoulder and gave a low bow. Until next time, he whispered, and the gods, for once, said nothing. The temple had changed. The once echoing walls of wisdom and riddles now held a silence deeper than sound. After a storm of revelations, betrayals, shifting gods, and fragile mortals, it was hard to tell what was real and what had always been part of Eshu's grand design. The council chamber stood empty, its once blazing fires now reduced to pale blue embers flickering quietly, almost uncertain of their own heat. The mask of Eshu rested in the center of the marble floor, untouched, humming with energy. Outside, the sky flickered between dawn and dusk as if even time had been confused, manipulated, folded into itself. The horizon rippled like a curtain being pulled by unseen hands. And there, under the fractured sky, the surviving emissaries gathered, each marked by their encounter with the trickster. Some bore physical scars, burn marks, missing fingers, trembling limbs. Others were marked only in the eyes, the burden of having glimpsed the truth. Behind a divine illusion, Anya stepped forward. Her armor was gone, replaced with humble robes, and her eyes no longer searched for battle, they searched for meaning. She had spent a lifetime learning to read patterns in smoke, in stars, in the bones of the dead. But never before had she read a pattern so complete, so horrifying, and so clever. Eshu hadn't simply misled them, he had rebuilt the world through stories, each tale reshaping the next. I think, Anya said slowly, looking down at the mask, this was never about choosing sides. It was about making us realize there were no sides. A laugh answered her, soft, playful, distant and yet everywhere. It echoed from the stones, from the trees, from within their very thoughts. A child's laugh, perhaps, or an old man's, or a trickster god's. From the shadows of the shattered temple arches, Eshu stepped out, not with a dramatic entrance, not with thunder or magic, but as if he had always been there. He wore no mask. His face shifted slightly every few moments. Young, old, male, female, smiling, weeping, bored, joyful. His eyes, however, never changed. They shimmered with mirth and mystery. You found it, Eshu said cheerfully, glancing at the mask on the ground, the center of the web. My final gift. Milo stepped back. This isn't over, is it? Eshu grinned. Over? Oh no. You think truth is a line you cross, a prize at the bottom of a quest. No, it's a hallway of mirrors. Every reflection you chase leads to another until you finally laugh. Laugh at the absurdity of seeking the end. Anya approached him slowly. Why? Why deceive us? Why play this long, winding game? Eshu tilted his head. Because I had to. Because it's the only way. You listen. Mortals, gods too, for that matter, are obsessed with certainty. You carve your beliefs into stone. But when you laugh, that's when your mind is open. And when it's open, I can walk in. And do what? Asked a voice from the crowd. Mock us? No. Eshu said, suddenly quiet. Set you free. The wind rustled the trees. The fires behind them flickered in rhythm with his voice. You seek meaning in things that were never meant to be caged. Truth, power, fate. You crave order so deeply. You can't see the beauty in chaos. But chaos is divine. Behind him, the mask began to levitate, spinning slowly. Its surface was shifting, changing colors, shapes, expressions. Every story ever told was etched into its surface now, and the air around it began to hum with a strange, ancient rhythm. You may destroy the temples. You may unmask the gods. But the trick remains. Every time you laugh at what shouldn't be, every time you doubt the obvious, every time you tell a story, I live on. Anya swallowed hard. So you win. Eshu shrugged. Win? There's no winning. Only dancing. I dance between your truths. I slip between your certainties. And every time you think you've caught me, I'm already wearing a new face. One of the younger emissaries stepped forward. Then what are we supposed to do? If everything's a trick? Eshu smiled gently. Make your own. Tell stories. Live with doubt. Be foolish. Be brave. Be kind. Trick others. And let them trick you. The world was never a straight path. It was always a spiral. The spinning mask suddenly cracked open, and from within it, a light burst forth. A memory, a vision. No one could say. The emissaries saw flashes of themselves, of their ancestors, of other realms, other masks, other games. It wasn't revelation. It was possibility. And then, just like that, the mask dissolved into stardust. Eshu turned to leave, his steps making no sound. But before disappearing into the air, he looked over his shoulder. I'll be seeing you. In stories. In mistakes. In the laughter that follows a lie. And then he was gone. Left behind, the emissaries stood in silence. The wind had settled. The fires had died. But something had shifted inside them. They no longer looked to gods for answers. They had seen the trick. And now, perhaps, they were ready to become tricksters themselves. Far away, in a market stall, a child giggled as a coin vanished from a magician's hand. In a royal court, a jester whispered a joke that made the king frown, then laugh.